eligible for federal disaster funding to deal with damage from the tropical storms Irene and Lee. But getting that money requires that the state and local governments also provide some assistance. Altogether, the aid needs to add up to 25% of FEMA's funding, assuming that it comes. Traditionally, that cost has been split between the state and local governments, but this time, the New York Association of Counties is asking the state to pick up the full cost. There's actually precedent for that. Here to explain why is NYSEC Executive Director Stephen Acquario. Mr. Acquario, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
This is something that the state's done before, correct?
There's precedent for the state to step in and to assist localities, distressed localities that are not in a position to meet the federal match.
Right.
And so the storms that came in here with the hurricanes were enormous in impact and the dislocation of people and the damage that's been caused by these storms puts these localities in a position to say, state, can you please help us? Governor Cuomo has been a leader on his feet and with his words and actions in the communities, rolling up his sleeves and helping to rebuild these parts of the areas. And so the local governments right now are saying, you've seen the devastation. Can you please offset the local share? Please consider that.
It's 12.5%. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the governor just this morning did some radio interviews and said, you know what? It's funny. This is a little bit, not funny, ha-ha, but funny, ironic. It's a little bit of a trickle-down situation because Washington is fighting over FEMA funding, right? And they were playing a little bit of a game of chicken, sort of like what we saw with the debt ceiling. And it's possible that they are promising a lot of money on the ground. It's possible that we won't have any. FEMA, could go broke. Okay. Then the governor says, well, we can't afford to pick up the federal share, nor can we afford to pick up the state share. He's expecting costs of $1 billion. I don't think the state is in any shape to do any piece of that or beyond what it has to do.
Well, I think we have to, first of all, remind each other that we will get through this, that we'll get through this emergency situation, that we will endure these problems that have hit these hard-hit areas of this state. I think we have to ask what is fair, what is right, and how can we collectively, the federal, the state, and the local governments, come together and rebuild these areas. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about generations of people that have lived in these communities that are moving out never to return. In some areas like Greene County, hit very hard.
Right.
There's nowhere to live and there are no jobs to stay there. So I think it's going to take a collective body, be it the federal government, the state government, the local government. I understand what the governor is saying. We don't have those resources. But by the same token, we're saying we don't either. And isn't this a matter of state concern? So we have to work together. I think the governor has moved mountains to get to the recovery effort well underway, jump-starting it by cutting the red tape. The regulations that were in place for good reason, those regulations, many instances have been waived to assist in a more rapid recovery effort.
Well, now you have some local municipalities, school districts, library districts, town boards, county legislatures saying basically, that 2% tax cap is too onerous. We can't actually, we have to go to the people if there are still people to tax to the degree that they actually have property that's worth taxing, because some people don't have even houses left or businesses. We need to ask them to pony up, to do this collective responsibility. They're looking to override the tax cap. It could be a widespread phenomenon.
Well, I don't want to link the floods and natural disasters to the tax cap.
But in some cases, that's the case, isn't it?
In some cases, it's put severe hardship and pressure in a county like Schoharie to step up and do that. You're absolutely right. But it calls into question what are local taxes being used for. We should have local taxation in the state of New York to pay for local purposes. That is what we should be doing. We don't have that today. We're raising local taxation for the state's bills, state programs and services. And that's why things have to change. That's why we talk about mandate relief. Lieutenant Governor has been saying, show me a mandate. Well, from a county's perspective, a unfunded mandate is the state's bill. Lower that bill. Allow us to use local taxation for local purposes.
Right,
like the flood relief.
And also that the trio of legislators that we saw last week who are suggesting that the local share of Medicaid gets picked up by the counties, by the state entirely, correct?
Well, that's correct. There is a unique opportunity here for the state to transition and choose what is important. Is cutting property taxes or reducing property taxes or eliminating property taxes in some instances through this piece of legislation called a Medicaid takeover? There are ways that we could address that. There are unique opportunities that are moving into this state between the next 3 and 8 years. And that piece of legislation is very important because what it does and why it matters is we are spending at the county level right now $20 million every single day for one program, Medicaid. Can you imagine if we could gradually reduce that at the same time, finance it, and you have that paid for through federal resources and state savings? It will make a dramatic difference.
You know, Steve, over the summer I was in California for a little bit, and I talked to some folks out there. It was pretty interesting. A lot of the counties there are privatizing. I'm not suggesting that that's a great idea or not a great idea, but they are privatizing out things like police, fire, garbage pickup, street cleaning to the degree that they have it there. Is that what we're looking at? That there won't be any municipal government anymore? It'll be a city manager who deals with a bunch of contracts? Is that what we're looking towards?
Well, I certainly hope not. I think the government closest to the people, the local government, has a very real and legitimate and serious purpose. If the average person, whoever is the average person in New York, is driving around on the roads, they're on a local road. All local services or services that they actually touch, water, sewer, the things that really matter, road patrol, jails, those are all a local function. And those that can't afford to do things for themselves or have been out of a job or need public assistance, that is a local function. So I don't think we're going to get to that situation of privatizing sources. And I think what we're going to see, though, over the next couple of years is the sale of a lot of public assets to the private sector.
Right.
What are they? Nursing homes, certified home health agencies.
We're already seeing that,
and
even infrastructure to a certain degree. I just want to talk briefly about jobs and economic development. We're having a big conference here. The former President Clinton is going to be here, obviously. Your members, which should be the county officials, some of them are members of this economic development sort of triumvirate, if you will, these 10 councils. They will be on hand. What is their reaction so far to the efforts by the administration?
Well, I think what really matters here in New York State is that the last thing we need in the middle of a recession, and perhaps a double recession in the state of New York, is a jobless recovery. What does that mean? As the nation, as the state is trying to get out of a recession, you need to have spending to help get out of that recession. Consumers need to have a job to spend. So without that job, we could likely have a jobless recovery. And that is not going to work for this state. That's why it is so important for these regional economic development councils to succeed. That's why everybody must fight to make these things succeed, because if we look at what's happened to New York State for the past 5 years, the federal government is in the same situation. The past 5 years, we have flat revenue growth, sales, income tax, and now property tax flat.
But what about the idea that there's actually room for spending, reining in spending, spending control? Do you not believe that that needs to be part of the picture?
Without question. We have to have spending control. And I think Governor Cuomo has shown that in his 2011 budget, where he's eliminated a $10 billion budget deficit. That deficit's not going away. The revenues for this state to fund the government operations are based on income and sales tax. They're flat. There's not many jobs. So we need to reinvigorate this economy by creating jobs. That's why these councils are so important.
Okay. Well, of course, we'll be, keeping up with you. It seems like the next legislative session is right around the corner. There will be a renewed focus on mandate relief, it looks like, and I think that your members are hoping for that. I'm sure that they are. In the meantime, I want to thank you, Steve Acquario, for coming by.
Thank you very much.